On the engagement party invitation, the bride's name read Serafina. It wasn't my name. I sat in a corner of the banquet hall, clutching the gold-embossed invitation, a paper cut slicing my fingertip. Beads of blood seeped out, staining the final stroke of the character. "Sis, why didn't you say something when you arrived?" Serafina stood before me, her champagne-colored gown shimmering under the lights, the diamond necklace on her collarbone worth at least the price of a house. She held the groom's arm, smiling at me sweetly, but the warmth in her eyes never reached her pupils. 3 years. 3 years ago, she knelt before me, crying, "Sis, I won't take him from you." Now she's wearing the dress I designed, the diamonds my mother left me, and holding my fiancé's arm at my engagement party. That engagement party, which should have been mine. "Soren," I looked at the man, "you said you would only marry me in this lifetime." Soren didn't meet my eyes. He turned his head and exchanged a glance with Serafina, a look I understood completely. It wasn't guilt, wasn't shame, but the irritation of "Why are you here?" "Linnea," he finally spoke, using my name, Serafina, "and I truly love each other." "You, let go." Truly in love. For words, light as a drifting leaf. But when they fell upon me, they felt like a knife. "Your hand is bleeding." A voice came from behind me, low and cold, like a river frozen over in winter. I turned around. A man stood behind me, in a dark gray suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. His face looked too pale under the chandeliers of the banquet hall, as if he hadn't seen the sun in a long time. But his eyes were black, deep and heavy, like 2 bottomless wells. He handed me a handkerchief. White, folded neatly, the edges crisply pressed. I didn't take it. "I don't know you." "I know." He didn't withdraw the handkerchief. "But the blood on your hand is dripping onto the floor. This is the site of your mother's engagement banquet. She wouldn't want to see blood." My fingers clenched abruptly. The site of my mother's engagement banquet. No one knew about this except the Shin family. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. He bent down, placed the handkerchief on my knee, then straightened up and turned away. His figure disappeared behind the revolving doors of the banquet hall, like a drop of ink melting into the night. Serafina's engagement party ended at 10 in the evening. I washed the blood off my hands in the restroom and pressed the wound with that white handkerchief. On one corner of the handkerchief was embroidered a small pattern, an eagle with outstretched wings, and beneath the wings, a single letter, K. I didn't think much of it. I folded the handkerchief and put it into my pocket. As I walked out of the hotel, the night wind rushed in, making me shiver. The doorman was hailing a taxi for me. I stood on the steps, watching the headlights of cars coming and going on the opposite street, my mind a complete blank. The phone vibrated. An anonymous text message, no number, no IP. "Linnea, the inheritance your mother left you is not with the Shin family. It's inside the pendant of the necklace around Serafina's neck. That diamond is fake. The real one is in the safe in your father's study. The password is 0612. I stared at the message, reading it word by word 3 times. Then I deleted it. Not because I didn't believe it. But because I did. I believed the content of this message, just as I believed that the diamond necklace around Serafina's neck was not the heirloom my mother left me, just as I believed that Soren's true love was nothing but a pretty lie. I deleted it because I don't need anyone to tell me these things. I know. I've always known. I was just waiting for the right moment. The taxi pulled up in front of me. I opened the door, got in, and gave the driver the address of the Shin family's main residence. The car drove into the night. In the rearview mirror, the golden lights of the hotel grew smaller and smaller, eventually disappearing around the next corner. My fingers traced the handkerchief in my pocket, the tips brushing against the embroidered eagle pattern. I remembered that name. 10 years ago, at my mother's funeral, a man stood in the last row. He wore a black trench coat, without an umbrella, and rain streamed down his face. He stood there for a long time, so long that everyone else had left, yet he remained. I walked over and handed him an umbrella. He didn't take it. He just looked at me, for a long time, and then said one thing: "You look just like your mother." Then he left. I picked up a business card he had dropped on the ground. There was only one word on the card: K. It was a blank card, no company, no title, no phone number. Only that letter, and the emblem of an eagle with outstretched wings. The same person. 10 years ago, at my mother's funeral. Today, at Serafina's engagement banquet. He was watching me. Or rather, he was watching every move of the Shin family. Who exactly is he? The taxi stopped at the main gate of the Shin family estate. I didn't get out. I sat in the car, staring at that vermilion gate. The stone lions on either side cast 2 long shadows under the streetlights, like crouching beasts. 2 large red lanterns hung above the lintel, put up today for the engagement banquet. On the lanterns were 2 characters: Shin Mansion. This was my home. Yet today, as I stood in that banquet hall, I felt like a stranger who had stumbled into someone else's wedding. It wasn't because I was being oversensitive. It was because every member of the Shin family in that banquet hall wore the same expression when they saw me walk in. Why is she here? It wasn't surprise, nor concern, it was annoyance. Like spotting a piece of gum stuck to the sole of a shoe. "Miss, we've arrived." The driver's voice came from the front seat. I didn't move. "Miss?" "Turn around," I said. "Take me to the old pier in the east of the city." The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror but didn't ask any questions. He turned the steering wheel, the car reversed direction, and we headed toward the eastern side of the city. The old pier east of the city had been abandoned for 10 years. The container yard had become a territory for stray cats, and the cranes were rusted, like the skeletons of dead giraffes. The river wind was strong, making it hard for me to stand steady. I walked to the very edge of the pier and stood before the railing. The river water was black, moonlight shattered on its surface like a scattering of broken glass. I took out my phone and dialed the anonymous number. The call connected. No one spoke on the other end, only the sound of breathing. Steady, even, like the breath of someone asleep. "Kay," I said, "I know you're listening." Silence. "You showed up at your mother's funeral 10 years ago. And now you've appeared at Serafina's engagement party today. You're after the Shin family, aren't you?" The sound of breathing paused for a moment. Then, a voice rang out. Not from the phone. From behind me. "I'm after you." I spun around sharply. The man who had handed me the handkerchief in the banquet hall was standing just 2 meters behind me. Moonlight fell on his face, pale as a sheet of paper. But his eyes were alive, black as ink, sharp as a blade. "Who the hell are you?" I asked. He didn't answer my question. He said a name. A name that made my blood run cold. "I am your mother's younger brother. Your biological uncle. My name is Gideon." He reached out and handed me a USB drive. "Your mother didn't die of illness. She was killed by the Shin family. And the murderer who killed her is now sitting in the study of the Shin family's main residence. Do you want to go see?" The study in the Shin family's main residence was lit. I stood behind the osmanthus tree in the courtyard and saw through the window Harrison, my uncle, the current head of the Shin family, sitting behind the desk, a cigar in his hand, making a phone call. His expression was relaxed, even carrying a hint of a smile. He had just returned from his daughter's engagement banquet. The necklace around his daughter's neck was one he had taken from my mother. "Are you sure you want to go in?" Gideon's voice came from behind me, so low that only I could hear. I didn't answer. I was thinking about the day my mother died. 15 years ago, I was 7. That day, Mother said she would take me to buy books. She was wearing that blue trench coat, her hair loose, without any makeup. She looked very tired, with deep dark circles under her eyes, but she was smiling. "Linnea, Mom is taking you somewhere." Where? A secret Mom has kept hidden for a long time. She never told me what the secret was. Because the car had an accident on the way. The brakes failed. In the last second, my mother unbuckled my seatbelt and pushed me out through the window. I tumbled several times on the grass by the roadside, scraping my arm, but I was unharmed. My mother and the car plunged off the cliff. I didn't see the moment the car went over the edge. Because the instant I hit the ground, I instinctively closed my eyes. But I heard the sounds. The screech of metal against rock. The shattering of glass. And, after all those sounds faded away, a man's voice. That voice said, "Clean it up." When I opened my eyes, a man was standing at the edge of the cliff. He was silhouetted against the moonlight, and I couldn't make out his face. But I saw the watch on his wrist, a Patek Philippe, with a deep blue dial and the Shin family crest engraved on the strap. That watch, only one person in the Shin family had it. Harrison. My uncle. I never told anyone about it. At 7 years old, I didn't know how to speak this truth. By the time I grew up and understood what that sound meant, I had no way to prove it anymore. 15 years had passed, the evidence was long gone. I was the only witness, and I was a child of the Shin family. A child's words meant nothing in court. So I waited. I waited for 15 years. Your mother's death, Gideon's voice pulled me back to reality, wasn't caused by brake failure. Someone cut the brake fluid line. The cut was fresh, meaning it was done shortly before she left. That morning, only 3 people had access to her car: your uncle, your father, and the driver. The driver resigned that afternoon, left the city, and has been missing ever since. Your father was in a car accident 3 days after your mother's death, became a vegetable, and has never woken up. I turned my head to look at Gideon. Why do you know all this? Because your mother sent me all the materials she had investigated a week before the accident. She sent them by registered mail to my address in Switzerland at the time. The letter was in transit for 5 days. On the day of the accident, it hadn't arrived yet. Gideon pulled an envelope from the inside pocket of his coat and handed it to me. The envelope was yellow, its edges worn, and the postmark was clearly visible: September 12, 15 years ago. My mother's handwriting. Recipient, Gideon. Address, Zurich, Switzerland. I tore open the envelope. Inside was a thick stack of paper, densely covered in handwriting. Every page bore my mother's script, delicate yet forceful. The first page had only one line: "Little brother, if I die, give this to Linnea." My hands began to tremble. Not from the cold. Because I recognized the date beneath that line. September 12th. The day before her accident. She had written this knowing she might die. I turned to the second page. It read, "Harrison has at least 4 suspicious fund transfers in Shin Corporation's overseas shell companies. Each exceeds $20 million US. The funds ultimately flowed into 3 offshore accounts, whose actual controller is not Harrison, but his partner, a man named Gideon Wells. I couldn't find more information about him, but I suspect he is the person you've been looking for." Gideon Wells. Gideon. My uncle, another name. I looked up at him. His expression didn't change. On that pale face, only his eyes moved, not looking at anything, but thinking about something. "Gideon Wells is you," I said. "Mother is investigating you." "She's investigating Harrison's partner," Gideon said. "She doesn't know that person is me. I thought she was investigating me, so I hid from her for 3 years. By the time I realized she wasn't investigating me, but someone else, she had already." He didn't finish his sentence. The night breeze blew over, rustling the leaves and branches of the osmanthus tree. The light in the study went out. Harrison walked out. He was wearing slippers, holding his phone, speaking to someone. His voice was soft, but in the quiet of the night, every word was crystal clear. "Don't mention the necklace to anyone. That diamond isn't hers, it's Linnea's. Linnea is dead, so the diamond belongs to the Shin family. Serafina is my daughter, it's only natural for her to wear it. He hung up the phone and walked into the inner courtyard. The door closed behind him. Gideon looked at me. Do you want the diamond? It's not the diamond I want, I said. What I want is for him to admit that my mother's death was no accident. He'll never admit it. I know. Then what do you plan to do? I watched the direction where Harrison had disappeared. Under the moonlight, that vermilion door was tightly shut. A sliver of warm yellow light seeped through the crack in the door. It was the night lamp in the inner courtyard corridor of the Shin family's main residence. 15 years ago, I stood at the edge of a cliff, and the moonlight shone on the dial of that Patek Philippe just like this. 15 years later, I stood under the osmanthus tree, and the moonlight shone on the same watch. The watch was the same. The person was the same. But I was no longer a 7-year-old child. Uncle, I said. Gideon's shoulders trembled slightly. This was the first time I had called him uncle. You help me get that diamond, and I'll help you get Harrison's ledger. We trade. Gideon was silent for a long time. So long that I thought he had refused. Then he said something that sent a chill down my spine. No need to trade. That diamond holds the ledger you want. Before I could ask for clarification, my phone vibrated. A new message, from Serafina. Sis, Soren said he never loved you. He said he married you only because you were the eldest daughter of the Shin family, and that you could help him get the Shin family's shares. Now that he didn't get the shares, he's going to marry me. Guess who told him that marrying you wouldn't get him the shares? I stared at the message, my fingers tightening bit by bit. I could guess. It was Harrison. He pushed Soren toward me, then took him away. From start to finish, I was just a pawn on his chessboard. The diamond came into my hands the next evening. Gideon didn't tell me how he got it. He only sent me a message with a set of coordinates, the old church on the east side of the city, under the third row of benches. I went. Under the cushion of the third row bench, I felt a velvet pouch. I opened it, and inside was a diamond, about 3 carats, cut in an old-fashioned style, not as brilliant as today's diamonds. But its color was unusual, not the ordinary colorless, but an extremely faint pink, as if something had dyed it from within. My mother loved pink the most. I held the diamond up to the moonlight. Nothing. Gideon had said there was a ledger hidden inside the diamond. But I couldn't see any information. No words, no numbers, nothing that looked like data. I took out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shone a strong beam through the side of the diamond. The light refracted inside, forming a pattern. It wasn't a ledger. It was a map. A coordinate. A coordinate I recognized. Wangbei Tower. The landmark building under construction by the Shin Group had been stalled for 2 years due to a funding chain rupture. On the construction site of that building, there was a cornerstone. Beneath the cornerstone, a box was buried. My mother had buried it 15 years ago. I arrived at the Wangbei Tower construction site at 1 in the morning. There was a hole in the fence, and I crawled through it. The site was pitch black, with only the faint glow of distant streetlights casting a weak light. My flashlight swept back and forth across the abandoned building materials and weeds, until I found that cornerstone. Carved into the cornerstone was Harrison's name, along with the date construction began. I crouched down and ran my hand along the edge of the stone. One side was loose, someone had moved it. I pushed the stone aside with all my strength. Beneath it was a plastic box, sealed tightly, with no dirt inside. A label was stuck to the lid, in my mother's handwriting, Linnea, 10th birthday gift. 10 years old. I'm 22 now. This gift is 12 years late. I opened the box. Inside, it wasn't a gift. It was a handwritten record, a thick stack of paper, every page filled with writing. The first page, Harrison, March 2008, transferred the equity of 3 subsidiaries under the Shin Group to the offshore company Chongqing International at 60% below market value. The actual controller of Chongqing International, Gideon Wells. Page 2, Harrison, November 2010, transferred the 8 million yuan of Science and Technology Innovation Fund declared by the Shin Group to the government into a private account in 4 installments. 3 million yuan of that was used to purchase the land north of the city, and the registered holder of that land is Serafina. Page 3, Harrison, July 2012, instructed driver Zeke to tamper with Linnea's car. Zeke received a hush money of 500,000 yuan afterward and has since moved abroad. My hands were trembling. Not out of fear, but out of rage. 15 years. This stack of papers had been buried here for 15 years. And Harrison sat in the study of the Shin family mansion, smoking a cigar, making phone calls, living with a clear conscience for 15 years. I turned page after page. The last page wasn't a record. It was a letter. Linnea, if you're reading this letter, it means you've grown up, and it also means your mother couldn't be here to see this day. I'm sorry, Linnea. I've made many mistakes in my life, and the biggest one was marrying into the Shin family. I thought I could change this place, but I couldn't. The Shin family's roots are rotten, from the inside out, from the old to the young. You are not a member of the Shin family. You are a member of the Lin family. Your grandmother's surname is Lin, your grandfather's surname is Lin, and your mother's surname is Lin. You don't have to bear the guilt of the Shin family's sins, you only need to be responsible for yourself. What's recorded in these papers is enough to put Harrison in prison. But you need to think carefully, do you really want to do this? This isn't just his crime, it's also the Shin family's festering wound. Tearing it open will hurt you. But Mom believes in you. You are my daughter, and you are stronger than me. Forever loving you, Mom. I pressed the letter to my chest and looked up. There were no stars in the sky, the clouds were thick, like a gray quilt smothering the entire city. The tears didn't fall. Not because I held them back, but because I couldn't cry anymore. 15 years ago, I cried all night at the edge of a cliff. Ever since then, it was as if I had been drained dry, unable to shed another tear. You're here after all. A voice came from behind me. I didn't turn around. The footsteps drew closer, crunching against the gravel. Someone came to a stop beside me. Gideon. You knew the box was here all along, I said. I did. But I had no right to take it. It was left for you by your mother. Then why did you wait until now to tell me? Gideon was silent for a moment. Because I was waiting for the right moment. What moment? For when you're no longer alone. I turned to look at him. Under the moonlight, his face was still pale, but there was a warmth in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. It wasn't tenderness, it was something more complex, something like guilt, or perhaps resolve. Your mother called me one last time before she died, he said. She said, brother, if I die, take care of Linnea. Don't let her be alone. He paused. I promised her. But I broke that promise. For 12 years, I've been hiding in the shadows, watching you grow up alone, carrying everything on your own. I didn't dare show myself because I was afraid Harrison would find out I was still alive and come after you. Now you've shown up. Because now you don't need my protection anymore. Now you have that stack of papers in your hands, and you're capable of protecting yourself. But I still want to tell you, you're not alone. I lowered my head, looking at the stack of paper in my hands. The edges of the paper had been eroded by time, yellowed and brittle, like autumn leaves that would crumble at the slightest touch. But the handwriting on them was still clear, every stroke carrying the last of my mother's strength. Uncle, I said. Yeah. Do me a favor. Speak. Help me get Serafina to come out. Tomorrow. Just the 3 of us. Gideon glanced at me. Are you sure about this? I've been thinking about it for 15 years. The next afternoon, at the old church in the east of the city, Serafina walked in with an impatient look on her face. Linnea, what do you want from me? I'm very busy, her voice caught as she saw Gideon standing by the altar. Who is he? You don't need to know who he is, I said. All you need to know is that I didn't call you here today to catch up. I pulled the pink diamond from my pocket and set it on the back of the pew. Serafina's eyes widened. That diamond. This diamond belonged to my mother, I interrupted her. That necklace around your neck was given to my mother by my grandfather on her 18th birthday. The diamond was brought back by my grandfather from Sri Lanka, not purchased. Because he couldn't afford to buy one. He was just an ordinary high school teacher who saved 3 years' salary just to afford such a small diamond. Serafina's face turned pale. You're lying. I'm not lying. I flipped through my mother's handwritten records to the 5th page. The necklace around your neck was taken by Uncle from Mother's belongings. He gave it to you, telling you it was a family heirloom of the Shin family. But the Shin family has no heirlooms. The Shin family's first fortune was stolen. It was swindled by grandfather in the 1960s from an engineer named Lyndon. Lyndon is my maternal grandfather. Serafina stepped back and bumped into the bench. Her hands gripped the backrest, knuckles turning white. What exactly did you call me here for today? I looked at her. My cousin, 3 years younger than me. A girl who had been raised in the palm of my uncle's hand since childhood. She wore the dresses I designed, adorned herself with the diamonds my mother left behind, and married the man who was once my fiancé. She didn't do it on purpose, she was just used to it. Used to my uncle giving her the best of everything, used to getting whatever she wanted, used to others yielding to her, indulging her, doting on her. It had never occurred to her that those best things were stolen. Serafina, I said, I want you to return the necklace to me in front of everyone. And then I want you to tell Uncle that you know everything. Impossible. You can choose not to. I pulled out my phone from my pocket, opened a file, and turned the screen toward her. It was a summary I had compiled overnight, the core content extracted from my mother's records, evidence enough to put Harrison behind bars. I had rewritten it in clear, simple language, complete with charts and a timeline, so anyone reading it could understand. I'm sending this to you. You tell him. Or I'll send it directly to the SEC. Your choice. Serafina stared at the screen, her pupils contracting. Gideon stood beside the altar, silent. His shadow, stretched long by the afternoon sun, fell on the ground like a silent guard. The church was very quiet. The Virgin Mary on the stained glass window looked down upon the three of us, her expression compassionate yet distant. Serafina's eyes reddened. She reached for the necklace around her neck, her fingers trembling. Sis. Don't call me sister. Serafina's hand froze. She looked at me, her lips trembling. Then she did something I didn't expect. She took off the necklace. Not to hand it to me. She threw it on the ground. The sound of diamonds striking the stone floor was crisp and sharp, like a brief scream. The necklace bounced twice and rolled under the bench. I don't want it anymore, Serafina said, her voice trembling. I don't want anything anymore. Not even Soren. Do whatever you want. She turned around and ran out. The door slammed shut behind her. Only Gideon and I remained in the church. I bent down and picked up the necklace from under the pew. The diamond was still there. It hadn't shattered. I wiped the dust off the diamond's surface with my thumb and held it in my palm. The stone was cold. My mother had held it. My grandfather had held it. Now it was my turn. So, Gideon said, what do you plan to do next? I put the necklace into my pocket. Tomorrow is the Shin Group's annual shareholders meeting. Uncle will announce Serafina as the new vice president of the group. Are you going? I'm going. In what capacity? I looked into Gideon's eyes. As the largest shareholder of the Shin Group. For the first time, Gideon's expression cracked. What? The patent my grandfather was swindled out of back then was later turned into the Shin Group's core product, earning them billions. Based on current valuations, that patent accounts for 37% of the Shin Group's total assets. I am Lyndon's only direct descendant. That 37% belongs to me. I paused for a moment. I'm not a pawn of the Shin family. I am the Shin family's creditor. Gideon's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted. The shareholders' meeting has been cancelled. Harrison just announced that the Shin Group has been fully acquired by Chongqing International. And the actual controller of Chongqing International, guess who? I read his face, and the answer hit me like ice water pouring over my head. It was Gideon Wells. And Gideon Wells was the alias he had used for 15 years. The shareholders' meeting was scheduled for 9 in the morning. I arrived at the Shin Group building at 8:30. The security guard at the entrance stopped me. "Miss, please show your ID." "I'm a shareholder." The guard glanced at the visitor list and shook his head. "Sorry, your name isn't on the list." "Does it have Serafina's name on it?" The security guard paused. "Yes." "Does she have shares?" The security guard said nothing. I walked past him toward the elevator. He reached out to stop me, but a hand came from the side and pushed his arm away. Gideon. Today he was wearing a dark blue suit, his hair neatly combed, looking like a proper businessman. But I noticed his tie clip, the eagle with outstretched wings, identical to the one on the handkerchief. "Miss Linnea is a shareholder of the Shin Group," he said to the security guard, his voice low but each word striking the air like a nail. "According to corporate law, any shareholder has the right to attend the shareholders' meeting. If you block her, I can sue you for obstructing a shareholder's rights." The security guard looked at him, then at me, and withdrew his hand. The elevator doors opened. Gideon and I stepped inside. As the elevator doors closed, I saw Serafina walk in through the building's entrance. She was wearing a black suit, her hair pinned up, with heavy makeup. She looked like a true vice president. Her eyes met mine for a second. Then she looked away. The elevator began to rise. Gideon stood beside me, silent. I looked at myself in the mirrored walls of the elevator, black trench coat, ponytail, no makeup. The stack of papers was in my pocket, and the diamond was clutched in my palm. I didn't look like I was here for a meeting. I looked like I was here to collect a debt. In fact, that was exactly what I was here to do. The conference room was on the 18th floor. The moment the door swung open, every gaze fell on me. The long table was lined with people on both sides. Harrison sat at the head, his face ashen. Beside him was Serafina, head down, scrolling through her phone. The other directors, shareholders, and executives filled the table, some I recognized, some I didn't. "Linnea," Harrison's voice hissed through clenched teeth, "this is no place for you." I pulled the stack of papers from my pocket and placed them on the table. "This is a record of all your illegal asset transfers, embezzlement of funds, and," I paused, meeting his eyes, "murders, from 2008 to 2012. The conference room erupted into chaos. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Harrison shot to his feet, his chair toppling backward and crashing onto the floor with a deafening bang. "Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, you know it yourself." I pulled the third page from the stack and read aloud, "July 2012, instructed driver Zeke to tamper with Linnea's car. Zeke received a hush payment of $500,000 afterward and has since moved abroad." Harrison's face went from livid to ashen. "This is a frame-up. Driver Zeke is now living in Vancouver," Gideon spoke up, his voice low but enough to silence the entire meeting room. "I've already handed over his address, phone number, and bank account to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Do you want to call him and ask if he's willing to come back to testify?" Harrison opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Serafina lifted her head and looked at her father. On her heavily made-up face, the expression was complicated. Not surprise, not anger, but something I couldn't quite read. It was as if she knew something, yet didn't know that she knew it. "One more thing," I said. "About the identity of the largest shareholder of the Shin Group. I pulled the diamond from my pocket and placed it on the table. Inside this diamond is a copy of my grandfather Lyndon's patent certificate. Patent number ZL 2003-123,456.7. This patent was used by the Shin Group in 2005 under the guise of technical cooperation without a single cent in royalties ever being paid. According to current patent law and corporate law, this patent accounts for 37% of the Shin Group's core assets. I am Lyndon's only direct descendant. That 37% is yours? A voice came from the other end of the conference room. Everyone turned their heads. Marcus. My third uncle. The most inconspicuous son of the Shin family. He never fought for anything, always sat in the corner, silent as a wall. He stood up, pulled a USB drive from his pocket, and placed it on the table. Everything Linnea said is true, he said, but I have one more thing to add. He looked at Harrison. Big brother, you've always believed that the real controller of Chongqing International was Gideon Wells. But you got one thing wrong. Gideon Wells isn't me, and it isn't Gideon either. He paused. Gideon Wells is you. You registered the company under a fake identity. You transferred the Shin family's money into your own account, then to Chongqing International, and finally back again. You thought you were laundering money, but in reality, you were. Shut up. Harrison's voice sounded like a cornered beast. Marcus didn't shut up. He looked at Harrison, his expression as calm as a stagnant pool of water. Actually, you're digging your own grave. That money has been transferred for 10 years, every single transaction recorded. You thought those records were destroyed, but what you didn't know is that Linnea, a month before the incident, backed up every single record and stored them on the private server of the Shin Group. The highest level access to that server isn't in your hands, nor in mine. He turned to me. It's in hers. Everyone's gaze fell back on me. I didn't say a word. I walked over to the large screen in the conference room and swiped my fingers across the touch panel a few times. The screen lit up, displaying a document. File name, Linnea Evidence Package.zip. I entered the password. 0612, my mother's birthday. The file was unzipped. A dozen folders appeared on the screen, each named after a year. From 2008 to 2012, a full 5 years, records of every transaction, screenshots of every email, recordings of every phone call. Neatly organized, solid evidence, irrefutable. No one spoke in the meeting room. Harrison stood there, his hands braced on the table, like a stone statue. His face had lost all color, his eyes fixed on the screen, the file names reflected in his pupils. Serafina lowered her head, her shoulders trembling slightly. Marcus sat back down in his chair, folded his hands in front of him, and resumed his usual silent demeanor. I turned around to face everyone. Harrison is suspected of embezzlement, misappropriation of funds, money laundering, and intentional homicide. The evidence is all here. I will hand it all over to the Securities Regulatory Commission and the public security authorities within today. I paused for a moment, took the necklace out of my pocket, and placed it on the table. This necklace belonged to my mother. I'll be taking it. Then I looked at Serafina. Serafina, the diamond on the necklace you're wearing is fake. The real one is here. The one you've been wearing for 15 years, my mother bought it for 50 yuan at a street stall. Serafina jerked her head up. Her eyes were rimmed with red. You want to ask why I didn't say it sooner? I finished her sentence for her. Because I was waiting for the right moment. Waiting for you to get used to wearing fake diamonds, parading in my designs, marrying my ex-fiancé, sitting in a seat that was never yours. Once you were used to all of that, I'd tell you, nothing you have is real. Serafina's tears finally fell. Not one by one, but in streams, like beads off a broken string. She didn't speak. She just sat there, crying, staring at me. I felt no pity for her. Not because I'm a bad person. But because she didn't deserve my pity. She wasn't innocent. She knew the necklace was left by my mother. She knew Soren was my fiancé. She knew what my uncle had done. She wasn't ignorant, she just didn't care. The only person she ever cared about was herself. Linnea, Marcus's voice came from behind. You've done what you needed to do. Now it's my turn. I turned around. Marcus stood up and walked toward the large screen. He picked up the stylus and opened a folder on the screen. The folder was named, Marcus, Personal Account. He opened the only file inside. It was a video. In the video, Marcus sat in a dimly lit room, speaking to the camera. My name is Marcus. I am the third son of the Shin family. I am here to report two people, my father, Augustus, and my eldest brother, Harrison. Over the past 30 years, through means such as forging contracts, transferring assets, and bribery, they have embezzled more than 60% of the Shin Group's assets. Here is all the evidence I have gathered. The conference room erupted once again. This time, no one could remain calm. Harrison slumped back in his chair. His phone slipped from his hand, screen side down, hitting the floor with a sharp crack. Serafina had stopped crying. She just sat there, dazed, like an empty shell drained of its soul. I stared at Marcus on the screen, the man who had remained silent in the Shin family for 40 years, the third uncle everyone had dismissed as a good-for-nothing. He is no waste. He is the sharpest blade. He has been hidden in its sheath all his life, waiting for this very day to plunge into Harrison's heart. The video hadn't even finished playing when the lights in the conference room suddenly went out. It wasn't a power outage, someone had cut the electricity. The emergency lights flickered on, and in the dim glow, the door was pushed open from the outside. An old man walked in. He wore a gray mouse suit, his hair completely white, his back slightly hunched, but his steps were steady. He walked to the long table and looked at everyone. Then he looked at me. Linnea, he said, you've made this too big. Augustus. The patriarch of the Shin family, the founder of the Shin Group 30 years ago, who had announced his retirement and seclusion 15 years ago. He had returned. Augustus stood in the dim light of the emergency lamps, like a statue that had stepped out of a tomb. The air in the conference room froze. Harrison shot up from his chair, his face looking as if he had seen a ghost. Dad, aren't you? Not what? Dead? Augustus's voice wasn't loud, but every word carried a bone-chilling calmness. I'm not dead. I've been waiting for this day. He walked to the head of the long table, and Harrison sprang from that chair as if scalded. Augustus sat down, placing his hands on the table, fingers interlaced. Those hands were well maintained, nails neatly trimmed. Not like an 80-year-old man, but like a 50-year-old businessman. Linnea, he looked at me, what you're holding in your hands was left to you by your mother. I said nothing. But do you know how your mother got those things? I tightened my grip on the stack of papers in my pocket. I gave it to her. Marcus stood up from his seat. What did you say? Augustus didn't look at him. His gaze remained fixed on me. The first year your mother married into the Shin family, she discovered the family's problems. She came to me and asked what to do. I told her, investigate. Investigate to the very end. She spent 5 years digging up all the Shin family's dirty secrets. But what she didn't know was that the clues to those secrets were handed to her by me, step by step. Why? My voice was calm, so calm that even I found it unfamiliar. Because I need to cut away the rotten flesh of the Shin family. But I won't dirty my own hands. I need someone to wield the knife for me. Your mother is the best blade, intelligent, relentless, unafraid of death. She's dead. She wasn't afraid of death. My fingers tightened. You used her. Used her to investigate your own family. You knew that in the end, her investigation would cross Harrison's, you knew what Harrison would do, you knew she'd be in danger, and you still let her go. Augustus did not deny it. The root of the Shin family has rotted, he said. Cutting away the rotten flesh will draw blood. The blood she shed is the blood on your blade. Augustus was silent for a moment. Then he said something that silenced the entire meeting room. Yes. It's blood on my blade. But do you think the blood flowing in my veins isn't the blood of the Shin family? Do you think that after 32 years in this seat, my hands haven't been stained with blood? He extended his hands, turning them over, palms facing upward. There were no scars on them. My hands are not stained with blood, he said, but my conscience is. 32 years, washing every day, and it still won't come clean. No one spoke in the meeting room. The emergency light cast deep shadows across his face, his eyes hidden in the darkness, impossible to read. Then why did you come today? I asked. Let's end this. Augustus pulled an envelope from the inner pocket of his Zhongshan suit and placed it on the table. This is my will. After I die, the controlling stake in the Shin group, he looked at me, will be transferred to Linnea. Harrison jerked his head up. Dad. Shut up. Augustus didn't look at him. He was looking at me. Linnea, your mother investigated for 5 years, and you waited for 15. You're tougher than me. It took me 32 years, and I never had the courage to give everything away. It took you just 15 to push me to this point. He stood up. The Shin group is yours. Harrison's crimes will be decided by the law. The dirty money of the Shin family, you decide how to handle it. As for me, an 82-year-old man, I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. He turned around and walked toward the door. Wait. He stopped. Don't you want to know whether I'm willing to accept the Shin group? I asked. He didn't turn back. Whether you're willing or not is your business. Whether I give it or not is mine. I've given it. My part is done. He pushed open the door and walked out. The door closed behind him. All that remained in the conference room was a group of silent people and a dim emergency light. I stared at the envelope on the table. The will. 32 years of the Shin group. Bought with my mother's life. I reached out and picked up the envelope. Didn't open it. Stuffed it into my pocket. Harrison slumped in his chair like a fish yanked out of water, his mouth opening and closing, unable to make a sound. Serafina kept her head down, her shoulders trembling. Marcus sat in the corner, his expression as still as a stagnant pond. Under all those gazes, I picked up the necklace, picked up the stack of papers, picked up the envelope. The meeting is adjourned. I walked out of the conference room. The corridor was long, the lights very bright. The sound of my footsteps echoed through the empty hallway, like some ancient timepiece, striking against my heart with each beat. Gideon followed behind me, silent. When I reached the elevator, I stopped. You knew all along that Augustus was still alive. I know. You knew all along that the clues Mother was investigating were given by him. I know. Why didn't you tell me? Gideon was silent for a long time. Because your mother's last words before she died were, don't let Linnea know that her grandfather was the mastermind. She wanted you to hate Harrison, not Augustus. Because hating Augustus would only bring you more pain. I pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. I stepped inside, and Gideon followed. The elevator doors closed. I pressed the button for the first floor. The elevator began to descend. I watched the floor numbers jump one by one, 18, 17, 16, 15. Uncle. Yeah. Do you know what I hate the most? What? It's not that Harrison killed my mother. It's not that Augustus used my mother. It's not that Serafina took Soren. It's not that Soren betrayed me. I paused. The elevator reached the 14th floor. What I hate most is that every single one of them knew the truth, but not one told me. They let me walk alone in the darkness for 15 years. They stood in the light, watching me fall, get back up, and fall again, without ever reaching out a hand. Gideon said nothing. The elevator reached the 10th floor. My mother told me not to hate. She said hate is someone else's program, not mine. I looked at my reflection on the elevator doors. The woman in the black trench coat, with a ponytail and no tears in her eyes, that was me. 15 years. I groped in the darkness for 15 years, all for today, to stand in the light and watch those who once stood in the light step, one by one, into the darkness. I don't hate them, I said. But what they owe me, I'll take back, penny by penny. The elevator reached the first floor. The doors opened. I stepped out. The sunlight was blinding. Squinting, I stood on the steps in front of the Shin Group building, gazing at the traffic and the sea of people before me. My phone vibrated. A message. Not an anonymous text. It was Serafina. Sis, Soren's gone. He transferred all of Shin Group's cash out. It went to an account called Everlasting International. The actual controller of that account isn't Gideon Wells, not Harrison. It's Augustus. I stared at this message. Everlasting International. Augustus. He didn't come to the meeting room today to end all of this. He came to confirm whether I would accept his will. The will wasn't a gift to me. The will was an escape route he left for himself. If I didn't accept it, Shin Group would fall into the hands of outsiders. If what he offered me was rejected, he could legitimately use Everlasting International to acquire Shin Group. He won. Whether I accepted the will or not, the Shin family would return to his hands. I spent 15 years thinking I had finally walked out of the darkness. But I had only moved from a small chessboard to a larger one. The one who plays the game has always been him. Gideon took something out of his pocket and handed it to me. A ring, silver, engraved with 2 words, "Save yourself." Your mother left it for you. She said that if one day you felt like you had stepped into someone else's chessboard again, you should wear this ring. She had one more thing to say. I took the ring and slipped it onto my finger. She said, Linnea, beyond the chessboard, there is only yourself. I did not return to the Shin family's main residence. I checked into a hotel, locked the door, drew the curtains, and switched my phone to airplane mode. Then I sat down and began reading Augustus's will. 32 pages. Every page was filled with legal jargon, meticulously worded, watertight. He was transferring 51% of the Shin Group's shares to me, on the condition that I needed to double the Shin Group's net profit within 5 years. If I failed, the shares would automatically transfer to Chongqing International. 5 years. Double the profit. The Shin Group's current debt ratio was as high as 72%, its core product market share had been declining for 3 consecutive years, and cash flow was so tight that even employee salaries had to be paid with bank loans. Doubling the profit in 5 years was an impossible task under normal circumstances. Augustus knew it was impossible. So he wasn't really giving the Shin Group to me. He was giving me an impossible mission, waiting 5 years, and then legitimately taking the Shin Group back into his own hands. When the time comes, it's not that I won't, but that I can't. No one will blame him. He's thought of everything. I closed the will, leaned back in my chair, and shut my eyes. 15 years. 15 years. I thought I was investigating my mother's death. I thought I was searching for the truth. I thought I was seeking revenge. But the truth is, I'd been running on a track designed by Augustus. Every step I took landed exactly where he had set it. Every decision I made was calculated by him. Including my discovery of that stack of papers. Including my acquisition of the diamond. Including my storming into the shareholders' meeting. Including Marcus stepping forward to expose Harrison. It was all orchestrated by him. Why did Marcus suddenly step forward? Because Augustus made him. Marcus was the knife he had planted beside Harrison. Once Harrison fell, Augustus could use the name of Evergrande International to take over the Shin Group. Even Harrison himself didn't know that he had been helping Augustus launder money all along. The funds transferred to Evergrande International would, after going through countless detours, eventually end up back in Augustus's hands. It took him 15 years to funnel the Shin family's money from one hand to the other, washing it clean. Then he handed me a hollowed-out Shin group and gave me 5 years to fill the hole. If I failed, it would be my incompetence. If I succeeded, he could still use his stake in Evergrande International to siphon off most of the profits. No matter how you calculate it, he never loses. And no matter how I calculate it, I always lose. I tossed the will onto the table, stood up, and walked to the window. I pulled open the curtains. The city's nightscape spread out before me, a sea of lights from countless homes, like a golden ocean. In this ocean, one of the ships belonged to the Shin family. The ship's owner was Augustus. I was just a lifeboat being towed behind it, a rope that could be cut loose at any moment and abandoned in the vast sea. I reached out my hand and looked at the ring on my ring finger. Save yourself. Save yourself. My mother said that if I ever felt like I had stepped into someone else's chessboard, I should put on this ring. But what lies outside the chessboard? It was what she said, only yourself. But what does only yourself mean? Is it telling me to rely on myself to get out? Or is it telling me that I was never on that board in the first place? I thought about it for a long time. At 2 a.m, I picked up my phone and turned off airplane mode. There was one new message. It wasn't from Serafina, not from Gideon, not from anyone I knew. The sender's number was blank. The content was just one line: your mother wasn't killed by Harrison. Harrison was merely the executor. The real mastermind behind it all is Augustus. He needed your mother's death to fuel your hatred. Because only if you hated the Shin family enough would you investigate them. Only if you investigated the Shin family could he pin their dirty debts on you. I stare at the message. Breathe. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then I laugh. Not a bitter laugh, not an angry laugh, it's the kind of laugh that says, I knew it. I already suspected it. From the moment Augustus said she's not afraid of death in the conference room, I knew. But I didn't dare confirm it. Because confirming it would mean that for 15 years, from start to finish, I've been fighting alone against an opponent I could never defeat. An 82-year-old man who designed all of this, my own grandfather. I picked up my phone and replied to that message from the anonymous number. Without typing a single word. She sent only one punctuation mark, a period. Then I turned off my phone, placed it on the nightstand, lay down, and closed my eyes. I wasn't asleep. But I wasn't awake either. I drifted in a state between dreaming and waking, as if floating on the surface of water, beneath me, an unfathomable depth, above me, an unreachable sky. I dreamed of my mother. She stood in a patch of white light, wearing that blue trench coat, her hair loose, smiling at me. Linnea, she said, don't be afraid. I'm not scared. You're shaking. I looked down at my hands. They were indeed trembling. Linnea, your mother once told you a story. What story? There was a child locked in a room. The room had no door, no windows, walls on all sides. The child's father called from outside, come out. The child said, I have no door. The father said, the wall is the door. I don't remember that story. The wall is the door, my mother repeated. Linnea, the wall is the door. I opened my eyes. 4:44 in the morning. I sat up, picked up my phone, and turned it on. Opened the Notes app and created a new page. I typed 3 words, the wall breaker. Then I began to write. A plan. Not one to double the Shin Group's profits within 5 years. Another plan. A plan to ensure Augustus would never take back the Shin Group. Outside the window, the sky gradually brightened. My fingers moved swiftly across the screen, typing word by word. 5:17 a.m. The proposal was finished. 19 pages. Every single word was written by me. No one guided me. No one told me what to do. No one designed this path for me from behind. This is the first time in my life that I have walked a path completely, thoroughly, and entirely on my own. I saved the document, uploaded it to my private server, and set up triple encryption. Then I picked up the ring and held it up to the morning light outside the window. Ferry thyself. Not ferry oneself. It is ferry thyself, to carry oneself across. From this shore of the river to the other shore. This shore is the Shin family's chessboard. The other shore is my own land. I put on the ring. This time I am no one's pawn. I am my own player. My phone rang. Gideon. I picked up. Linnea, Augustus just announced that Evergrande International has officially launched a takeover bid for the Shin Group. He's not waiting for your 5-year performance agreement. He wants it now. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, the signing ceremony. Are you going? I looked out the window at the brightening sky. I'm going. But not to sign. I'm going to, I paused, twisting the ring. Sign his death certificate. The signing ceremony was held in the boardroom on the top floor of the Shin Group headquarters. At 9:55 in the morning, I arrived. The boardroom door was wide open, the room packed with people. Augustus sat at the head of the table, dressed today in a dark gray mouse suit, his hair combed immaculately, looking like a retired senior official attending some important meeting. On both sides of the long table sat the directors of the Shin Group, representatives from Chongqing International, and lawyers from 2 law firms. Marcus sat in the corner, silent as usual. Serafina was not there. Harrison was in the detention center, awaiting trial. Gideon stood by the door, waiting for me. Are you ready? He asked. I've been ready since I was 7. I walked into the conference room. Everyone's eyes fell on me. Augustus looked up and glanced at me. Those eyes showed no emotion, like 2 bottomless pits. Linnea, he said, what are you doing here? I'm here for the signing ceremony. You're not a shareholder of Chongqing International, nor of the Shin Group. You have no standing. I walked over to the long table, pulled a USB drive from my pocket, and placed it on the table. This is the proof of ownership for 37% of the Shin Group's equity. I am Lyndon's sole direct descendant. That 37% belongs to me. Augustus stared at the USB drive without moving. That 37% has already been acquired by Chongqing International. Acquired by whom? By Chongqing International. Who is the actual controller of Chongqing International? Augustus did not answer. It's you, I said for him. You're the actual controller of Chongqing International. You used your own money to buy back your own company's shares. You moved money from your left pocket to your right pocket, and then told me the left pocket was empty. A flicker of change finally crossed Augustus's expression. Not anger, not surprise, was it admiration? You knew all this, and you still came? I came because the funds used by Chongqing International to acquire Shin Group's shares came from an illegal source. The conference room fell silent. What did you use to acquire it? The Shin Group's money. You transferred the Shin Group's funds to Chongqing International, then used Chongqing International's name to acquire the Shin Group. This is a textbook case of self-dealing, violating both company law and securities law. Every cent you used for the acquisition came from the Shin Group itself. So what you acquired wasn't the Shin Group's equity, it was your own money. Augustus tapped his fingers lightly on the table. Do you have proof? I pulled a stack of papers from my bag and placed them on the table. This is a record of all financial transactions between the Shin Group and Chongqing International. From 2008 to today, every single one. Dates, amounts, accounts, handlers. It's all here. Augustus stared at the stack of papers for a long time. Then he smiled. Linnea, you're smarter than your mother. I'm more ruthless than her. Yes, you are. She knew the truth, but she didn't dare use it to trade for my life. You do. It's not about trading for your life. It's about trading for the Shin family's fate. What the Shin family owes me, I'm taking back all at once today. The lawyers in the conference room began whispering among themselves. The representative from Chongqing International looked ashen-faced. Marcus stood up from the corner, walked to the long table, and sat down. Father, he looked at Augustus, stop this now. Augustus didn't look at him. Linnea, do you think you've won? I didn't win. I just wouldn't let you win. What's the difference? The difference is, I don't need to win. I just need you to lose. Augustus's fingers stopped on the table. He looked at me, for a long time. In those eyes, there was a light I had never seen before. Not anger, not sorrow, not any ordinary human emotion. But a kind of relief. Like someone who had walked a long, dark tunnel and finally saw the exit. Linnea, he said, if your mother were still alive, she would be proud of you. She's not. Because you wouldn't let her live. Augustus fell silent. Then he stood up. The signing ceremony is cancelled. He picked up the documents from the table, stuffed them into his briefcase, turned around, and walked toward the door. Augustus. He stopped. Aren't you going to apologize? He stood at the doorway, his back turned to me. His silhouette was thin, hunched, like an old tree bent by the wind. He was silent for a long time. Then he spoke. His voice was so soft, barely audible, as if he were talking to himself. I'm sorry. He pushed open the door and walked out. All that remained in the conference room was a silent crowd and a mess of evidence scattered across the table. I looked at the door. It was closed. Through the glass window in the door, I watched Augustus's back disappear at the end of the hallway. That back was slow, old, and weary. Like a horse that had been whipped for too long, finally unharnessed. I didn't feel relieved. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel the thrill of revenge accomplished. I just felt tired. Not physically tired, but that 15-year drive inside me had suddenly been drained away. Gideon walked over and stood beside me. Let's go, he said. It's over. I looked at the stack of papers on the table. Those papers, my mother had paid for them with her life. I had spent 15 years retrieving them. Augustus had hidden them for 32 years. Now they lay there, like offerings in some kind of ritual. I reached out and picked up the stack of papers. It's not over. Gideon looked at me. Augustus can leave. But the Shin group cannot leave. The Shin family's money cannot leave. The people the Shin family has harmed, my mother, the driver Zeke, and those whose names I don't even know, they cannot have died in vain. I turned around, facing those lawyers and directors. The Shin group will undergo asset liquidation. All illegally obtained gains will be turned over to the state treasury. Legal assets will be redistributed. The Shin family's controlling stake will be fully transferred to the employee stock ownership plan. From today onward, the Shin group no longer belongs to the Shin family. It belongs to everyone. A director stood up. You don't have the authority to do this. I do. Because 37% of the Shin group's shares are in my hands. As for the remaining 63%, Chongqing International's acquisition was illegal, so it's void. Who is the actual controller of that 63%? It's Augustus. But Augustus has now fled. So that 63% is temporarily under court custody. I looked at that director. Do you want to bet on who the court will award that 63% to? The director sat down. No one else in the conference room stood up. I handed the stack of papers to Gideon. Handle this for me. Then I turned around and walked out of the conference room. The corridor was long, the lights very bright. My footsteps echoed through the empty hallway, one step, another, and another. This time, it wasn't a timer. It was a heartbeat. I was still alive. I had walked out. 3 months later. The old church in the east of the city. I stood before the altar, wearing that blue trench coat, my mother's. In my pocket was the ring. There were only 2 people in the church. Me and Gideon. Uncle. Yeah. I'm leaving. Where to? I don't know. I'll just go wherever the road takes me. Gideon was silent for a moment. Then he pulled something out of his pocket and handed it to me. A photograph. A picture of my mother. My mother when she was young, wearing a white dress, standing under a tree full of blossoms, smiling brightly. Your mother asked me to give this to you before you leave. I looked at the photograph. Mother's smile was warm, like a ray of sunlight shining into this cold, gloomy church. I pressed the photo against my heart. Thank you. You're welcome. What will you do from now on? Keep doing what I do. Investigate those who should not be forgotten. I looked into his eyes. Those black eyes were no longer like 2 bottomless wells. They had a bottom now. At the bottom, there was a glimmer of light, small, faint, but bright. Let's go, he said. It'll be too late to catch the bus. I nodded. Turning around, I walked out of the church. The sunlight was blinding. Squinting, I stood on the steps and looked at the road ahead. The road stretched far, with no end in sight. But I didn't need to see the end. I only needed to take the first step. I walked down the steps, reached the roadside, and hailed a taxi. Where to? The driver asked. The train station. The car merged into traffic. I took the ring out of my pocket and slipped it onto my finger. Ferry oneself. To ferry oneself. Not to the other shore. But to a place with no shore at all. Because true freedom isn't about finding a shore, it's about learning to swim in the water. My phone vibrated. A message. Not an anonymous text. It was from Serafina. Sis, I went to see Father today. He said he wants to see you. Are you going? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed one word, no. Send. Then I turned off my phone and put it in my pocket. The city outside the window was receding. Those skyscrapers, those streets, those places where I had lived for 22 years, were shrinking, fading, blurring bit by bit. The taxi drove onto the elevated highway, and the city spread out beneath me like a dense, intricate chessboard. There were pieces on the chessboard. But I was no longer on it. I'm in this car. On this road. In this direction that belongs to no one. My name is Linnea. I don't belong to the Shin family. I belong to myself.